There you go. Hello, everyone. I'm Kyle Williams, and this is my Aspect Symposium presentation. This will be a look into some phonetic and semantic, or sonic and significant, trends in the music we listen to every day. Linguistics. Has anyone heard of it before? Yeah. The study of human language has been a subtle interest of mine for a few years, but taking an introductory course on it this year has caused that interest to blossom. When trying to think of a way of sharing this newfound passion with the prep community, my mind lashed onto one idea in particular: musical lyrics. Singing is a pillar of human expression. Songs with lyrics have come to define our rankings, our award shows, our plays, our movies, and our televisions. Even though these words are such important parts of our lives, we never studied lyrics or poetry in my linguistics class. I think taking a closer look at something we take for granted is a healthy habit to have, especially when we use these words to create connections and find hope. Plus, we should be able to see where music has come, and crucially, where it's gone. So this is going to be the outline for a presentation. We're going to look at how I created a data set of lyrics. We're going to be looking at how I analyze these lyrics, switching between methodology and findings for 3 techniques: word frequency, rhyming, and sentiment. And then overall, just taking everything that we've learned together and seeing how that informs how we should understand the music in the current time. Before I can do any analysis, right, I need a data set of lyrics. This is very challenging as record labels doggedly protect their copyrights, meaning someone can't just hand out the lyrics of a few thousand songs free. Just shout out in the audience or in the chat on Zoom, where do you guys get the lyrics for the music you listen to from? Spotify? All right, so I'm hearing mostly Genius and mostly Spotify. I actually was considering using Genius. That was actually one of the first things I thought of. But the thing is, I ran into issues doing something called web scraping, where basically, because really Genius does not want you to download the lyrics that they host on the website offsite. So I kind of have to just dig into the web page and pull that out. But I was having a lot of issues getting that to work consistently. But ultimately, I actually was able to find a way to use Spotify, the music player that probably most of you use. It's the most popular streaming service in the United States, in order to gather these lyrics. In November of 2021, Spotify partnered with a music company called Music Match. I was also considering using one of their services, but I just couldn't make it work for free, to provide real-time synced lyrics to songs, right? And then this GitHub user, Artandron, he reverse engineered how Spotify send these lyrics from their servers to the app, and then created an online interface for anybody to download these lyrics from Spotify for free. So great, now I have a place to get lyrics from. But how do I actually decide what songs I should download? This is where the Wasabi ontology comes in. It's a large database of music metadata, which allows me to get useful information about almost any popular song. Each song in the database gets assigned a popularity ranking alongside information like genre, country of origin, and release date, enabling us to see changes in music over time across country and genre. In total, my main corpus contains over 70,000 songs. Each song in the Wasabi ontology also contains a link to it on Spotify, which makes gathering the lyrics a lot easier. So basically, I just take the online interface for download lyrics, and I take the ontology and I just put them, and I just have them talk to one another. So then that's how I download everything. With our dataset handled, now we can begin to understand these lyrics. My analysis was done in the Python programming language using the Natural Language Toolkit, NLTK for short. It's a very powerful library for parsing English, which is used by professional computational linguists around the world. So does anyone have any questions right now? I know this is going to be a little bit technical, but I'm going to try to keep it as clean as possible. All right, great. First thing we're going to be looking at is word frequency. Counting words is a simple but effective technique for identifying semantic trends. If a writer wants to talk about something, or feels a certain way, they have to write it to convey it. A great way of visualizing word frequency is a word cloud. The bigger the word, the more it appears. In order to get to the heart of the meanings in these songs, we may want to focus only on nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs, right? So to do that, we can make use of NLTK's tagging functionality to identify a word's part of speech. For example, nouns start with an N. Most nouns start with an N, and verbs with a V. Finally, let's say we're only interested in certain categories of words, such as romance or time. We can create a filter that isolates such words and then use Wasabi to see if discussion of a topic in the lyrical canon increases or decreases over time or genre. There's a quick disclaimer for this section. We are going to see a few inappropriate words. While I have censored them, I decided to not remove them from the presentation altogether because I believe expletives are an important part of communication, especially in music, and that they shouldn't be shied away from just because of their crassness. And so with that, before we take a look at the findings, just again in the chat or here, does anyone have any suggestions for what you think the most common word in the English language is? All right, let's see. Well, according to my data set, the most common word is actually you or I. They're so close, it's not really fair to pick one over the other. This is in strong contrast to the Oxford English corpus, which ranks the as the most common word in English, with I coming in 9th and you coming in 18th. Honestly, very surprising. I believe that this may be due to a focus on actions done by people instead of objects, and many songs being written in a first-person perspective. Let's act on this insight and focus more on subjects, objects, and verbs. Now we're seeing some really interesting stuff. Here's some stuff that you can just see, but just by taking a look at the cloud. Ent is the most common word here. One really cool thing that NLTK does is that it'll actually like break up contractions. So like don't becomes do in nt, right? Because really when you think about it, it's do not. And so that happens with a lot of things like ain't becomes I in nt. So we can actually really see that like negation is actually a very important one, saying no to stuff, right? And then music is also very self-referential. Music makes a lot of references to dancing, the beat, and the song. And then also other common topics in music include love, God, and time. Just really quickly, does anyone here see something interesting in the word cloud that I don't? One. Yes, yes, a lot of music does talk about this. Does talk about personal desires.
I find it interesting, maybe like I don't see woman, but I see man and I see girl bigger. I think it seems like women are referred to. Not all women.
Yes, no, you are right. A woman in a lot of cases are referred to. They are the objects of sentences, not the subjects. You are very right in making that and noticing that. And then obviously with like the use of girl instead of woman, right? That can almost be seen as like an infantilization, right? Here are the most common words for each decade. Our good friends like do, int, and love all seem to be hard constants. But this view allows us to confirm the staying power of words. But you can't really, the way that these word clouds work, you can't really dig in and find differences, right? It's more so just better for confirming, okay, we just seeing consistency. So now I think it's a great time to introduce our groupings of words, right, to track movement of specific topics over time. And so we have these six categories: religion, expletives, love, time, war, and friends. As expected, words related to love soar high above the rest, although it seemingly has been taking a dip since the 80s. And expletives had quite a large uptake in the 90s and haven't really fallen down that much since. Other topics such as religion, friends, war, and time have, for the most part, stayed quite stable though. Now we're going to move on to our second analysis strategy, rhyming. The rhyme is by far the lyricist's most powerful tool. It acts as a creative constraint for writers and makes songs more catchy for their listeners. There are many ways to rhyme, but this analysis looks at the most common form, as we can see here from Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal. 2 words at the end of 2 lines that share a common ending in their pronunciation. This is very distinct from a spelling, right? Just because 2 words and have the same letter endings does not mean they're necessarily their endings are pronounced the same way. But rhyming is actually a little more complicated than just making sure that they both have some common ending sound, right? An early version of my rhyming code erroneously thought that the words devastated and cord rhymed. Can anyone tell me why? They do both end with that duh sound, don't they? Any suggestions about why that might be?
Maybe because the last vowel sounds are.
Bingo. That's exactly correct. Cord has an O sound, right? While devastated has an eh sound. So in order for 2 words to truly rhyme, right, they need every sound from their last vowels must be the same. Coming back to our initial example, when we move up from individual rhymes to the stanza as a whole, we can begin to analyze schemes. For example, this stanza has a scheme of AABB, as we have 2 clumped rhymes together right next to each other. We can also have mono rhymes like AAAA, alternating rhymes like ABAB, or enclosed rhymes like ABBA. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Anyone on Zoom?
Yeah, a couple things. First, from your chart where you had the categories, where did you pull the categories? Was there like a preceding study that you referenced? And same thing for the rhyming schemes. Was there like a reference that you used, or did you come up with those schemes on your own?
For the categories, I actually had to make those myself. I actually really wanted like some sort of study, but I just could not find it after confusion. I got a lot of help from Wordnik because they have this really cool tool called like a reverse dictionary. So they can see if words appear in the definitions of other words. And so then from there, I used that and I did like a little bit of pruning because like a lot of the words that they have in there can be really relevant. And I don't need like 1,000 words. I don't need a category to have like 1,000 words in it. And then answering your second question about the rhymings. Yeah, this seems, like pretty much the only thing I really couldn't find like a name for was AABB, even though surprisingly it seems like a very common rhyme. But like enclosed rhymes and then mono rhymes and alternating, those are like the standard names. Those are like the standard names for those rhymes in poetry analysis. All right. So now that we understand how we're going to look at the rhyme, let's take a look at the data. These are the 5 most common rhymes in my data set. 3 out of the top 5 include pronouns. Again, a consequence of that first person's perspective. The other 2 include the adjective away, separation, whether that be from a loved one or home, looks to be a very large topic in music. In terms of scheme, mono rhymes pull far ahead, increasing significantly in the 90s and aughts. Other forms of rhyming seem to have been taking a small downward trend, but you could also argue that maybe other than just fluctuations, that this seems to be very, very stable. This implies that while rhyming is still used as a constraint in songwriting, lyricists are sacrificing complexity, possibly to ease the writing process or even make their songs more accessible for listeners. So now let's go down to tone and emotion. They're both 2 parts of any common song, right? But emotion is best conveyed in the song's delivery. Listening to thousands of songs would be a very arduous task for a single person and definitely would not be achievable in the time limit I have for aspects. Not to mention that because of the fallibility of me as a human, it would likely be very error prone. The goal of sentiment analysis is to detect a tone and emotion in text. Generally, detection algorithms are focused on understanding if an author is expressing positive, neutral, or negative feelings in their text, but complex ones can detect other features as well. Sentiment is challenging because we humans learn how somebody feels about something through various context clues such as intonation, eye contact, and posture. We have none of that in text, which can make understanding things like sarcasm challenging. I'm sure many in this room have sent a text message and actually upset or confused someone because they didn't know we were being sarcastic or rhetorical. To aid me in this task, I decided to use DeepMoji, a deep learning model made by the MIT Media Lab. It uses a large corpus of trees to try and predict what emojis are likely to be paired with some text. I find this approach quite clever, as the little pictograms we send every day are packed with semantic information. I think the researchers behind the project are best fit to explain it, so I'll play this short video made by them. Right? By seeing what emojis come up the most, we can determine the general tone for a song, and then from there, see if lyrics become more positive or negative over time. So before we get into our final look at findings, does anyone have any questions?
Did you do any breaking out of genres in any of your research? Did you look at like cross genre?
That was one of my intentions, but due to time constraints of aspects, I ultimately decided it would be best to look at popular music as a whole and instead look at breakdown by decade. I would definitely, if I do return to this again, I would definitely have to make the pipeline for doing all of this a lot cleaner. But then once I would definitely decide to take a look at genre. All right. So let's take a look at the data. So here's oh wow, that chart is unreadable. These two lines up here, they are the musical notes and headphone emojis respectively. Together, they represent about 28% of sentiment in all decades of music. I believe they dominate the chart due to meta references such as dancing to the beat. Spotify includes a music note emoji to represent an instrumental section in a song in lyrics. That's really meant for people who are singing along, but is not really semantically relevant to understand lyrics. And then also just generally, I notice a lot of the time when somebody's expressing like jubilancy or like excitement, that seems to be Beatmoji seems to predict that they're going to use either of these emojis a lot. So generally, I think there's a lot of issues. So I don't really think having these in the analysis is like really helpful. So let's take them out of the chart and get a better look. So now we can very clearly see everything that I was at the bottom of the chart last slide, but we're still looking at over 40 data points all at once. Let's use a similar strategy to the word frequency analysis and group these emojis together. So we have a few lines to focus on. I did the groupings myself. This is a little bit of bias for me, but I think I did a pretty good job of like trying to put them together in a way that makes sense. So we have 6 categories: humor, love, and then positive emojis, neutral emojis, negative emojis, and then emojis that are meant to represent anger. Positive emotions are very high at the top for all decades. And negative emotions, surprisingly, even though it is the second one, there's a very significant gap in all genres, around 10%, which is really crazy. Humor has slightly increased over time, while love slightly decreased. But overall, everything seems to have stayed stable. So, after reviewing all of this analysis, what conclusions can we make about popular music? Music is about humans. We are almost always at the center of music, and we use lyrics to peer into the lives of others. In fact, writers are simplifying their music so that they can reach more listeners. Music is about the connections humans form with one another, whether that be a friend, lover, or foe. Music is also about time and space. We don't just speak in the abstract about ourselves and the actions we take. We take those actions and concerns and place them in concrete space. Whether we be worrying about running out of time to live or moving away from a loved one. The most beautiful thing about this is that these attributes have been a part of music and artistic expression in general, to be frank, in humanity for its entire history. Near constants, even in the wake of radical movements, such as the rise of modernity and industrialization. I find it quite inspiring that data can back up something that feels so fundamental about our existence and about our modern society and about these lyrics that we enjoy and share and sing along with every day. Thank you.